Buenas tardes. ¿Se escucha bien? Hello, thank you for that wonderful welcome. Again, can we give another hand of applause for the individuals that have been feeding us today? As was shared, my name is Gloria Montaño Greene. I am the Deputy Undersecretary for Farm Production and Conservation at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Thank you for the invitation for USDA. I know the invitation originally went to Deputy Secretary of U.S. Department of Agriculture, Xochitl Torres Small. She sends her regrets as she could not attend, especially since this is in her home state. If I could take a few moments, though, to talk about who she is, especially since we're in front of the Latina women's remarks today. Xochitl Torres Small last month got sworn in to be the Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. She broke a major glass ceiling. She is the granddaughter of farm workers. She's the first Latina to ever serve in that role. She's from New Mexico. She was previously serving as the Undersecretary of Rural Development. For me, as a Latina, to be able to see another ceiling shatter, to be able to make space for others, meant to be able to quote one of the young appointees at USDA that talked about her. Seeing a granddaughter of farm workers, Latina, be the number 2 at USDA lets us all show up as our full selves and no longer have to be worried about what it looks like, and to be able to see somebody like us in those leadership roles. Yes, it is. She's really great. Keep your eye on her. For those of you not familiar with the Department of Agriculture, we handle farmers, ranchers, food security, forest work, rural and economic development, investments in colleges, high schools, research and investment. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, and even when you're not thinking about us, the U.S. Department of Agriculture touches your life. For me to be able to serve as the Deputy Undersecretary, it's also a historic role. It's the first time a Latina has served in this position, to be able to oversee thousands of offices across the country and the territories of the United States, to be able to help farmers, ranchers, and private forest landowners succeed. It's historic because when the Biden-Harris administration looked around to make appointments, they didn't look fully at traditional ways of doing things. They thought and took some steps to say, what are our needs in our community? How do we better represent what the community that we need to serve? And is there capacity? Like Deputy Secretary Xochitl Torres Small, I did break a ceiling. There's a responsibility in being a primera. And that means that you're not la última. I was told very early on by giants of shoulders that I stand on that when you break that ceiling, there are 2 hands to bring 2 more with you. And there's a huge responsibility in the various generations in this room to make sure that while many of you have helped us become the ceiling breakers, that you also help us fill our hands as we move more people forward in that process. And I know that the honorees that were recognized before lunch, the honorees that we'll be recognizing later today, have dedicated their lives to make sure that ceilings can be broken, and that we are reminded that Latinas belong in the room. Latinas are very helpful to the process, and Latinas can make a more expansive support. So I work in agriculture, and agriculture is a very phenomenal place for us as Latinos to be in. We often think about it in farmers and farm workers only, but agriculture has a whole scope of life to be able to engage in. With the Department of Agriculture, it's a stronghold for economic, food, nutrition, and strength of our communities. I'm very lucky that I'm one of a handful of Latinos that are in the Secretary's office to be able to make sure that he's thinking about our communities, and I will tell you that he's always thinking about our communities. Today's theme is Saber es Poder. But I think the biggest thing is entender tu poder is part of this work, right? And it's to be able to know that there are many places that we need to exist in, There are many places that we haven't necessarily been thought of to exist, and that we can be able to push folks to be able to engage. My career has engaged with LULAC in many different ways: democracy, civic engagement, community mobilizing. But at its core, it's to make sure that folks know their power to be able to participate, their power to be able to open up the doors of government, to be able to make sure the community is better reflected. So I thank you for spending this entire conference to make sure that we are pushing another generation, pushing the current administration, and pushing our communities to be able to understand their power and the role that they can have. You know, on my daily notebook, I have this sign that says, "Niñas con sueños se convierten en mujeres con visión." As the mom of 2 young children, 1 son and 1 daughter, there's a huge responsibility that I have to show both of them of the ability that they have to make change and to make sure that there's always improvements and justice in the world that they live in, be it in the food that they consume, be it in the access of law, be it in the access of education, be it in transportation. But it has to make sure that there is respect and there is an ability to move forward. I think as we celebrate women, and it's the concept, how do you as a female show up? How have you gone in your career path? It is making sure that we open up doors to make sure we're included, that we're not afraid of our power to open up those doors. And if the power has not been given to us, that we open up the doors ourselves and make sure the power is available to us. I am sitting in a very unique spot as an appointee of the Biden-Harris administration. As I have talked to other folks, it's been very hard for them to embrace to see a Latina in agriculture, amongst Latinos and Latinas themselves. It's a very important industry to be able to show up in. The role of decision-making, the role of involvement, is to make sure that more people are included. So while I am here and in the role that I'm in, I ask you to, in conversations that you have with your communities, with youth, that you think of all different abilities that you can have. Within agriculture, and I'll be a little selfish about it, it means that it's every point of your life gets touched. And the less that we have Latinos involved, the less that we're able to best include what we need. So for me, it's a very, it's not an odd role. It's a really important role. Because if I care about how mothers get WIC and SNAP, if I care about how communities get rural development, if I care about how hospitals get funded in my community, if I care about how a farmer grows or hands off their farm, if I care about access to the forest to be able to do a hiking trail for my children, I have to care about agriculture. And I have to make sure that we are present. So there are many federal departments, many federal public service items. I just invite you as Latinas, as Latinos, to make sure that you're aware of it and to know your grace. A final thing, I shared it before, I am here on the shoulders of many giants. Many that have broken the glass ceiling and then realized there was others to break. I think we need to recognize and thank them. And we have to make sure that we are leading the path for so many young women that are in here to be able to know that they belong in the room. They belong in the next role that they have maybe not seen themselves in, and that they need to make sure to put that bridge forward on how we continue to make change. I want to again thank you all for the invitation. I'm sorry that Deputy Secretary Xochitl Torres Small, but her work this summer in being sworn in as the #2 and the first Deputy Secretary of Department of Agriculture is symbolic of what we all need to aspire to and how we all need to support each other as she continues to make additional strides and make sure the Department of Agriculture is better serving our communities. Congratulations to the nominees, and muchas gracias.